In the physical world, a fundamental law of physics dictates that whenever you utter a sound in a confined space, it naturally reverberates, sending an echo back to you. This simple interaction confirms the presence of the sound and the space it occupies. However, there exists a profoundly impactful psychological parallel to this phenomenon, a subtle but critical dynamic that often goes unrecognized by most. Imagine a child, a tiny being full of emergent emotions, reaching out, expressing a need for connection, for an emotional response. They don't always articulate this with words. Sometimes it's a pleading gaze, a tentative touch, or a hopeful expression on their face that seeks a sign, a glimmer of acknowledgement. All they truly need is a subtle shift in a caregiver's demeanor, a gentle nod, an empathetic glance that wordlessly communicates, "I see you. I hear your feelings. You are real and worthy of my attention." Yet, what happens when this vital echo is absent? When that delicate emotional reach-out simply dissipates into an empty void, swallowed by an unresponsive silence? The sound vanishes, fading into oblivion. Crucially, a child's developing mind does not perceive this as a flaw in their environment or a failing on the part of the room, the unresponsive caregiver. They lack the cognitive framework for such objective analysis. Instead, in their nascent understanding of the world, they draw a far more damaging conclusion, that their emotional sound, their very essence, was simply not significant enough, not valuable enough to warrant any response at all. This deeply personal, painful realization that their feelings are unworthy of an echo marks the genesis of a profound and lasting wound. For many decades, the field of psychology has primarily focused on understanding trauma as a distinct event that undeniably happens to an individual. It's something you can concretely point to in time and declare, that's exactly where it occurred, like the devastating impact of a car crash or the profound violation of an assault. These are experiences with a stark, undeniable before and after, making their traumatic nature readily apparent and relatable for many. However, this narrow definition has inadvertently overlooked an entire, vast category of profound human suffering, leaving it without adequate recognition, a proper name, or the much-needed empathy it deserves. From an external viewpoint, this particular form of emotional distress often doesn't fit the conventional image of trauma at all. The family home may still be standing. Parents might even be physically present, providing basic needs, creating an illusion of normalcy. No one is likely to pen a heartbreaking memoir detailing the quiet pain of a forgotten birthday, or the countless hours spent crying alone in their room, with no one ever coming to offer solace. Nor will they document the repeated instances of their mother's eyes drifting away, or their father's vacant stare, every single time they attempted to share something deeply personal and meaningful. These subtle absences, these things that didn't happen, often feel too insignificant to count as real wounds, making them incredibly difficult to articulate without feeling overly dramatic or demanding. Yet, these quiet, persistent voids invariably leave deep, lasting marks on the developing psyche, scars that are undeniably real, even if they remain entirely invisible to the naked eye. This profound and often overlooked form of suffering is what psychologists now precisely name childhood emotional neglect, or CEN. Its prolonged understudy is partly inherent in its elusive nature, defined not by any dramatic occurrences, but rather by what consistently, heartbreakingly, failed to materialize. It is the consistent, aching absence of genuine emotional attunement, the empathetic connection that simply never came into being. This form of neglect is truly defined not by the overt traumatic events that might have occurred, but rather by a persistent void, by what consistently and painfully failed to transpire in a child's early life. It's the constant, aching absence of genuine emotional attunement, that vital connection and understanding from a primary caregiver that simply never manifested. Specifically, it's the crucial mirroring process that was conspicuously absent, the interactive reflection of a child's inner world that is so fundamental to their emotional development. This brings us to a foundational developmental reality. Children learn to comprehend their own complex inner world with all its swirling emotions in much the same organic way they acquire language, through consistent reflection and validation from another. Imagine a compassionate caregiver gently observing, "You seem to be feeling quite sad right now, aren't you?" Such a simple statement performs an incredibly profound act of emotional education. They are, in essence, providing a crucial lesson that these ephemeral internal states truly exist, that they are not only nameable, but entirely valid, and that they matter immensely, significant enough to be noticed, acknowledged, and witnessed. However, when this essential process either never occurs or happens so infrequently that it simply fails to register, the profound consequences ripple through a child's development. This child inevitably matures into an adult who finds themselves genuinely and often bafflingly at a complete loss when attempting to identify, articulate, or even comprehend their own complex feelings. Clinically, there's a precise term for this perplexing condition, Alexithymia. It describes the significant difficulty individuals experience in identifying, understanding, and verbally describing their own internal emotional states. Extensive research and numerous studies have consistently revealed significantly higher rates of alexithymia among individuals who, tragically, endured persistent emotional neglect during their formative early years. Crucially, this isn't merely a quirky personality trait or a minor eccentricity. It is a substantial, often debilitating gap in emotional literacy, a direct consequence, a void left behind by a profound and consistent absence of emotional mirroring. Consider for a moment what it might be like to exist perpetually within an echo room, a space where every sound you utter, every emotional cry, is met with absolute silence, absorbed without a trace. Then, after decades of this profound nullification, you are simply instructed, just use your voice more clearly. How could one speak up when the very concept of vocal resonance is alien? This profound early experience molds a distinct adult profile, a pattern that is instantly recognizable to mental health professionals, yet remains utterly perplexing and bewildering to those who embody it daily. Often, these are exceptionally high-functioning individuals, outwardly capable, remarkably reliable, and seemingly well-adjusted, the very picture of someone everyone casually assumes is doing perfectly fine. Their outward composure is not genuine emotional well-being, but rather a meticulously crafted survival skill, perfected from such a tender age that the origin of this performance is long forgotten. Jenny Webb, the insightful clinician who pioneered the formal definition of childhood emotional neglect, frequently encounters patients presenting not with a distinct diagnosis, but a pervasive, subtle sense of something being fundamentally amiss. It's as if everyone else is broadcasting on a vibrant emotional frequency, effortlessly receiving and transmitting feelings, while they themselves remain frustratingly unable to tune into the signal. This isn't clinical depression or textbook anxiety. It's more akin to a pervasive emotional flatness, an attenuated existence, where life's vibrant colors are seen, but always through a distorting sheet of glass. When it comes to forming deep, meaningful relationships, the challenges faced by those with childhood emotional neglect become acutely apparent, transforming interactions into a truly agonizing spectacle. Individuals who grew up feeling utterly invisible often struggle not just to forge connections, but possess an uncanny tendency to subtly undermine intimacy, precisely when it verges on becoming truly profound. Imagine someone offers them a heartfelt, genuine compliment. Rather than accepting it, they instinctively deflect it or dismiss it with an uncomfortable laugh, unable to truly internalize such positive affirmation. Or perhaps they are the recipient of consistent, unconditional love, a pure affection that should feel incredibly safe, yet, paradoxically, it feels almost suffocating, deeply unsettling, and inherently wrong somehow. It's akin to perpetually holding your breath, waiting for the seemingly steadfast affection to be abruptly withdrawn, a haunting expectation born from past experiences. This deep-seated anticipation makes perfect sense. If the love you received during your formative years was inconsistent and utterly unpredictable, you would, quite naturally, eventually cease to rely on its presence. Consequently, one is compelled to adapt, evolving into a persona that declares, "I don't need anyone," someone who masters every situation and always appears entirely self-sufficient. While this outward display might be perceived as undeniable strength by others, it is, at its core, nothing more than a deeply ingrained, very old coping mechanism, honed over years of self-reliance. The intrinsic human desire for genuine closeness never truly vanishes. Rather, it becomes so profoundly buried beneath layers of learned independence that even the individual themselves ceases to perceive its quiet longing. Crucially, our fundamental human needs do not simply dissipate. They merely learn to become silent, ceasing to vocalize their presence once they understand that their cries will consistently go unheard. Indeed, a comprehensive 2024 scoping review, meticulously published in Child Abuse and Neglect and diligently analyzing 25 distinct studies, has provided consistent and compelling evidence that individuals who This extensive research unequivocally demonstrates a profound and consistent correlation. Individuals who suffered neglect during their formative childhood years face considerable and pervasive difficulties in effectively regulating their emotions throughout adulthood. More strikingly, the very researchers conducting this vital work underscored a critical oversight. Emotional neglect, despite its devastating impact, remains stubbornly one of the least investigated and understood manifestations of childhood suffering. This revelation, when truly contemplated, speaks volumes about our collective priorities and societal blind spots, exposing a fundamental flaw in how we approach unseen trauma. It highlights a disturbing paradox. The very emotional wounds that are most difficult to perceive, those that leave no visible scars, are precisely the ones society has invested the least effort in comprehending and addressing. This chronic lack of focused attention leaves countless individuals grappling in silence with the profound, unseen echoes of their past without the essential tools or comprehensive understanding they desperately need to heal. However, there is one crucial truth I truly wish for you to grasp, and I will articulate it with utmost clarity only once. The specific ways you learned to navigate the world, the behaviors you adopted to survive, were never inherently wrong or a mere mistake on your part. Instead, they were, in fact, incredibly ingenious solutions. These were smart, remarkably well-adapted responses, meticulously crafted by your developing self to an environment that implicitly, or sometimes explicitly, demanded you to shrink your authentic self. This environment forced you to minimize your needs and to expect considerably less from the world around you. Consider the child who intuitively learned to become quiet, understanding that silence was a shield, a silent promise of safety amidst chaos or indifference. Similarly, the child who transformed into the funny one discovered that evoking laughter in others was often the only consistent and reliable pathway to secure any form of attention or acknowledgement. Others might have channeled their suppressed energy, throwing themselves entirely into academic pursuits, becoming the diligent overachiever. Some took on the immense burden of becoming the caretaker, an emotional anchor for those around them. And in the most profoundly unfortunate circumstances, some children simply found a way to disappear, receding into their own inner worlds to escape the overwhelming reality. These young, vulnerable selves leaned heavily on the only psychological tools available to them at the time and they wielded them with remarkable effectiveness. The only, albeit significant, complication arises because we, as adults, do not automatically cease employing a deeply ingrained coping mechanism simply because the immediate need for it has vanished. You are no longer physically trapped in that room of your difficult past, yet a part of your nervous system, your very body, has not fully processed that liberation. It still reacts, perhaps subtly flinching when someone reaches out with genuine closeness or kindness. You might find yourself still struggling to decipher your own complex emotions, much like trying to discern a faint whisper from a distant room, with a thick, sound-dampening wall standing stubbornly between you and clarity. But here is the profound reassurance. These adaptive patterns, however deeply etched, are fortunately not permanent. The human brain possesses an astonishing and remarkable capacity for change and healing, even after enduring the most challenging and difficult childhoods. With conscious effort, and often with the compassionate guidance of therapy, true transformation is undeniably possible. We're not here to neatly tie a bow on this complex journey. The road to genuine healing is far from a simple, predictable path. It asks for more than just a quick fix or a tidy resolution. This healing process is inherently gradual, a tender unfolding that demands patience. It uniquely involves grappling with a profound, almost paradoxical grief, mourning the very presence of things that were conspicuously absent, the experiences that were unjustly denied. The challenging question then arises, how does one truly grieve for the never happened? How can you begin to process deep-seated emotional wounds when there isn't a singular, identifiable memory tethered to their origin? The answer, as daunting as it may seem, is found through immense persistence, unwavering self-compassion, and often the invaluable guidance of a trusted professional. Yet, before embarking on formal therapy, the journey of healing quietly begins in a more fundamental place. It starts with an internal, unwavering decision to finally deem your own raw, authentic experience as profoundly worthy of serious attention and validation. The devastating truth that no one was consistently present for your needs during your formative years does not, in any way, diminish your intrinsic worth. From the very beginning, you were and remain inherently deserving of profound care, unwavering presence, and unconditional love. On a day-to-day level, this commitment manifests in ways far less dramatic than one might anticipate. It doesn't necessitate an immediate, earth-shattering emotional breakthrough, but rather a quiet, consistent dedication to your inner landscape. Begin by simply noticing the emergence of an emotion, perhaps a flicker of anger, and instead of habitually suppressing it or dismissing it as an overreaction, pause. Allow yourself a precious moment to simply sit with that feeling, granting it the space and permission to just be. It involves the subtle act of catching yourself reflexively deflecting a genuine compliment, and instead of letting it pass, deliberately halting to introspect and gently inquire why that impulse to brush it off arose within you. These are small, seemingly insignificant moments of simply paying attention to your own intricate inner world. Trivial, perhaps, until you fully grasp the profound reality that for many, the very notion of their internal landscape holding any value was never affirmed, never taught. Such deep-seated patterns, unfortunately, do not dissolve overnight. Progress is rarely linear or instantaneous. However, with each honest moment of internal inquiry and self-connection, a subtle yet significant shift invariably occurs, gently reshaping your perception. For an individual who spent years feeling profoundly unheard and unseen, the ultimate triumph lies in the arduous but incredibly rewarding journey of learning to truly listen to and honor their own voice. This understanding often resonates deeply with a certain kind of soul, those solitary figures who, late at night, scrolling through the endless digital ether, serendipitously stumble upon these very words, these echoes of shared experience, recognizing themselves within the discussion of emotional neglect. For someone who dedicated their formative years navigating a world where their voice often felt unheard, their emotions unseen, the profound journey of genuinely listening to and affirm their own inner self becomes the ultimate transformative purpose. There's a specific soul, perhaps you, who finds themselves scrolling through the digital ether late into the night, when suddenly a phrase like emotional neglect catches their eye, and a deep, unsettling shift occurs within. It's a quiet, almost imperceptible tremor of recognition, a profound sense of uncomfortable familiarity that resonates deeply within your very being. If these words are striking a chord with you right now, I implore you to truly lean into and acknowledge that powerful internal sensation. Having a precise label for a deeply ingrained wound doesn't magically erase its existence, but this newfound recognition serves as a vital first step. This stirring is your nervous system, engaging in an essential function it may have never truly mastered before, beginning to validate your experience. It's an echo, perhaps faint at first, reverberating back to your conscious awareness, affirming that your internal narrative is profoundly real. Your inherent voice, your deepest self, always possessed immense value and deserved to be heard. It simply needed the right space to resound. If this discussion has deeply resonated with you, providing language for a burden you've long carried, a subscription would mean the world to this channel. I regularly craft these in-depth psychological explorations, and there's a vast landscape of understanding still awaiting our collective discovery. Furthermore, a join button is available for those who wish to offer direct support to the ongoing work and help bring more such insights to life. Do explore the additional videos on screen, where I trust you'll continue to find reflections of your own journey. Until next time.